Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
Great. So I guess we've already done introductions. I work for Amphibian Reptile Conservation, and we'll start with a little bit of introduction to the National Reptile Survey. And basically, the National Reptile Survey is part of a wider program called the National Amphibian Reptile Monitoring Program that we coordinate at Arc. We used to have a program called the National Amphibian and Reptile Recording Scheme, which has been replaced by the National Reptile Survey and alongside it the National Amphibian Survey. And Nick's covered it fairly well. Basically, we're trying to take data nationally to look at trends in populations of reptiles and amphibians, so where they're changing in distribution and where they're changing in actually population size as well. And it's quite hard to gather that data. So tagging into smaller local projects really helps us get those numbers up and get that data in. It's very hard nationally trying to coordinate lots of field activities remotely. It's much easier to have local contacts helping with that. So it's been great to have Nick and Claudia helping with that. And basically we're looking to have a network of sites across the UK, including your sites, which are monitored through repeated visits across the time we know when reptiles are active, and hopefully across multiple years as well, to help us see if those changes are happening and what might be causing them. So that's probably enough about the National Reptile Survey. Obviously, we're here tonight because we're interested in what's going on in your local area. So as Nick mentioned, we've taken the information that Nick and Claudia kindly provided on where you've got survey sites. And so actually I've got an interactive map here. We can see we've got all those sites already mapped, and we'll be looking at this map a little bit more later on. And obviously if we get any more sites in the project, we can always add them in a bit later. So all of those farms are currently a dot on that map. And if we zoom in a bit closer, we see the individual farms, and we can even zoom in a bit further, and we'll start to see where all of the mats, the refugia are laid out. And we can add in other information as well about, where's the best place to park your car, that sort of thing. So we can make it all available to you to help make your survey a bit easier, hopefully. And the way we want to try and help make surveys easier is through two types of survey tools. The first one is through survey forms. So rather than writing things down on paper or perhaps entering it in a spreadsheet, and actually we've developed like a custom designed form which you can either have on your phone or you can use on your computer. And it asks you all the questions that we want to have answered. So where was your survey? What did you see? The app allows you to use it offline as well, so you don't have to worry about having internet connection or anything like that. It's also able to use your GPS location, so it knows where you are, and you can just use your location from your phone. You don't have to type in a grid reference, for example. And when you've finished your survey form, you can press a button and it uploads it into our database pretty much straight away. So those records are available to be used and to be looked at almost immediately. And then we can share them to BMERC, to BBOUT, etc., to make sure they've got access to them as well. And I'll demonstrate how to use this in a moment. The other tool is, of course, the map side of things. So being able to have a map which shows where your farm is, where all your refugia are, and other things that might be of use as well, where to avoid, where you might need to park, where to get access, that sort of thing. And we can make those maps available, again, either on your mobile devices through an app, or you can access them through your web browser and use them on your computer. Again, you can also use them offline, so you don't have to have internet to use them if you're out in the field. You can also see where you are. So you could be walking around this farm. You could see a dot representing you versus where your next tin is that you need to check. You can turn layers on and off on the map. So maybe you want to get rid of the site boundary isn't really important for you to see. So you could turn that off and just have all of your tin locations on there. The map also allows you to use navigation. So either to actually give you driving directions to your farm, or actually using like a compass function to find your tin if it's got lost in some very tall bracken or something like that. And another function we've added into the maps as well is the ability to actually open up the survey form directly from the map. So I could click on my survey site and it will give me an option, a button to start a reptile survey, and that will open up the survey form and fill in some of the details for me. So the form would already know which site I'm doing my survey at. And more about that in a moment. So a precursor to all of this, this isn't public content. You do need a login to access this. So I will need to set you up with a user account as the first sort of call of order. The accounts are free. They don't cost you anything. All I need is a name and an email address. So I'll probably get those from Nick and Claudia. And once we've got you set up, you'll get an email from me basically inviting you to log in and to come and access the resources that we're making available. They'll include, as well as the maps and the forms, other things like guides on how to use those resources and anything else that might be useful to you. So don't worry about remembering everything we're covering tonight. We'll have the recording, but there are also other resources that we've made available that you'll have access to as well. So the main important thing to remember from when we set up your user account is remembering your username and your password. And that's what you'll use to access both the website, but also the apps. So to access the maps or to access the forms, you'll have a login to get those resources. So the survey form tool is an app called Survey 123. And to use that, you actually need to download that app onto your phone, your tablet, or onto your computer, or both, depending on how you want to use it. It's free to download. You download it the same way you download any other app. So if you're on your phone or your tablet, you download that through your app store. And we do have further guides on how to do this. Basically, you go to your app store, you search for Survey 123, and you download it. And that's available across all types of devices. So whether you're on an Apple device, Android, Windows, anything like that. If you're downloading it on your computer, you simply go to the Survey 123 resources website, which we'll make sure you've got the link to, and you'll see an option there to download the Arcgis Survey 123 field app, and you simply click on the appropriate link to download. So for most of you, that's probably either a Windows computer or a Mac, and you install that on your computer, like you would any other program. Once you've downloaded the Survey 123 app, either onto your mobile device or onto your computer, you then obviously go through the installation process. And once it's installed, you can open the app. And the first screen you get once you're logged in is a blank screen because you haven't downloaded any survey forms yet. And you'll see a button that says download surveys. Then you'll see a window with the different survey forms you have available to access. And the main one you need to download is called the National Reptile Survey. So it's a little form icon with it's a mobile icon picture with a picture of a lizard and a snake on it to make it quite obvious. You click on that to download it using the little cloud icon. It will download it into your Survey 123 app, and then it will appear on your app main screen. And I'll show this a bit more detail in a moment. But basically, once that's downloaded on your phone or on your computer, you can use it wherever you are. And occasionally you might get a prompt just to update it. If I maybe update something, maybe I found a spelling mistake or we want to add some more species to the species list, it will tell you when there's an update ready to download. So that's how you get the app and the form ready on your device. The other app you can download is a mobile map app. That's called Arcgis Explorer. So the same thing, you go to your app store to download it on your phone, you search for Arcgis Explorer, it's free to download. And once that's installed, you log in and basically you'll see a list of any maps you have access to. If you want to access the maps through your computer, Instead, you do that through a browser or a web link. So Google Chrome, Firefox, Microsoft Edge. We will give you the link to access that map. So you can either do that as a direct link to the map, or you can do it by accessing the website first through our resources page. And on that page will be a link that looks a bit like this, saying National Reptile Survey, Bucks Farmland, and a picture of a map. You click on that and it will open up your map for you. So actually in the background here, if I just open this up as a full screen, I'll just give you a demo of what that map looks like when you open it. It looks very much like you'll see on your phone as well. You can navigate around that map and you'll see some tools in the top bar. Again, I'll give you some more information on how to access that in a moment. Bear with me, I just need to go out full screen a second. Go back to my presentation. There we go. So yeah, you'll have access to that map, whether you're working on a computer or back at home. Oh, sorry, or out in the field. So now we're really going to get into the meat of it, and that is actually how to use the forms and how to use the maps. It's the kind of thing where you have to have a little bit of a play with it to get used to it. You probably will come across some bits that you're not sure about. So, you know, if you ever have any problems, you can get in touch with me or Nick and Claudia, who've had a little bit of experience now using this. So, you know, this training session isn't the end of any training. If you get stuck with it, do get in contact. But basically, once you've downloaded the Survey 123 app, in this case for the forms, you've logged in, you've downloaded your form, right, let's go out and collect some data. So I'm now going to show you how to use this Survey 123 app. And I'm going to demonstrate that first using the desktop version, the computer version, and later on I'll quickly show you how that looks on the mobile device as well. So bear with me, just loading. Any questions so far while that's loading?
Yeah, one question. You said there are two different apps. Do we have a choice of which to use?
So for the survey forms, you'll need the Survey 123 app. And if you want to access the maps on your mobile device, so a phone or a tablet, you will also need the Arcgis Explorer app.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
So one does the forms and one does the maps, basically.
I understand. Yeah.
And Rob, while you're on the maps, is it easy to download a map for each site so we can have as a PDF? So people can kind of save it or print it off, or when I've been in, I've done it as screenshots, but I'm sure that's incredibly clunky. But if we could download each farm, that would be really helpful.
Yes, so there is, I'll show you a way of doing that on the web version in a little bit.
Okay, yeah, don't worry about it now. If we can come back to it later, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
That's fine. So this is what the Survey 123 app looks like when you've downloaded it on your computer, and I'm logged in. So at the top here, I can see that I'm logged in. I've already got some forms downloaded here. You can see I've got lots of forms, whereas you'll only have access to one or two. So don't worry about it looking a bit busy on here. If I wanted to download more surveys, I can click on my initials or my little icon up here and click on download surveys, and it will show me a list of all the forms I have access to either download or update. So the one you'll be using is the National Reptile Survey form. I've already downloaded it, but I could see if there's an update by clicking this little refresh symbol, and it will just download any updates. But as long as it's appearing in this first main screen, so I can see here I've got National Reptile Survey, that's what you want. So you've logged in, and in your main screen, hopefully once you've downloaded the form, you'll see this National Reptile Survey option. To start the survey, so to collect some data from your survey, you click on that National Reptile Survey option, and it will take you to a sort of front page. There's not much information here. It just gives you a bit of an overview about the survey form. One thing I should mention is here it does say for mobile devices, but it also works on computers. We will soon be launching a desktop version of the form, which will look almost identical. You'll just see a sort of computer icon instead of a mobile icon there. The only difference is that it will just be slightly better optimized for use on computers. So the questions will appear in a slightly different order and we'll have done a couple of other tweaks. But the actual questions are the same. So you can use it on your mobile or your desktop. To actually start collecting data, we simply click on the Collect button. So if I want to start recording my survey results, I click on the Collect button and it will load up the survey. The first time you do this, it will come up with the words optimizing and a bit longer. What it's doing there is just downloading it's sort of unpacking the survey, if you like, on your device, and just making sure that everything's where it needs to be. But after you've done it the first time, it should be much quicker. So right, now this is what the actual form looks like. So it says National Reptile Survey at the top, you know where you're in the right place. And where possible, we've tried to include instructions as you go through to make it as self-explanatory as possible. But I'm going to go through and explain how the form works and what it looks like as much as I can in the time we've got today. The National Reptile Survey form is split up into 3 pages. So at the bottom there, you can see it says 1 of 3. So page 1 is all about what survey are you doing, who's doing it, where are you doing your survey, and when are you doing your survey. So by default, it knows you're doing the National Reptile Survey. If you just happen to be out walking your dog and you want to add in some other reptile records, you can still use this form. All you need to do is change this option to ad hoc, and you can just add in sort of some casual records as well. But for the most part, you will be using the National Reptile Survey option, and that means it knows you're out doing you're going out on purpose to go and do a reptile survey. After that, it asks you if you're doing the survey now. So I would say yes if I'm out in the field collecting data whilst I'm doing the form, or no if I'm filling in the form afterwards. So that'd be most of you if you're doing it on your computer. If you're the only recorder, you can leave this next question as yes. You don't need to write in your name or your email. It knows who you are because you're logged in. If you're not logged in, it will prompt you to log in. But if you went out with other people and you want to add their names, you can just click no here, and I can add some other names. So I'll say, I went out on a survey with Joe Bloggs. Well, I can't spell today, obviously. And I can add as many names as I want there, really. So Joe Bloggs is on that survey with me. The next question is, where are you doing your survey? Now, for each of the sites, we have a site name, but we also have a site code. So let's just say I'm doing Hambledon Farm. And I know we've given that farm a code, which is HBO. Now, don't worry about the codes just now. We'll come on to them a bit later, because there is a way in which if you open up the form from the map, it'll actually fill in the code for you. So you don't actually ever have to remember it. So that's not too much a problem. But the code is important because it's the site code which tells the form exactly which site you're at, and will actually allow some of the functionality we'll see later in the form, which I'll show you. Don't worry about subsite code and name. We do have to add a location for the survey site. So I can either use my GPS if I'm in the field, and that's this crosshairs icon. So in the form, you'll see a couple of these map type questions. You'll always see either a GPS icon, like this crosshairs one, or this square map symbol, which allows you to sort of choose on the map the location. So if I click on the GPS, it will try and find where I am. Now, this is through my computer. So it's using my computer IP address. I grabbed my home location. I'm actually down in the south coast of Devon. And it's telling me it's got an accuracy of 90 meters, but that's because I'm using my computer location. If it was on my phone, the accuracy would be much better. Or I could go into here and I could search for a location. In this case, I'm actually just going to put in the postcode of my office. And I can search using an address, a grid reference, what 3 words, if any of you use what 3 words, it'll accept all of those. And it's gone straight to my the office of Amphibian Reptile Conservation, which is actually this building just here. And I can say, yep, that's where my location is. So any map questions like that, you can either use your GPS or you can manually enter a location And I should say, you can obviously just manually drag and drop that to a different location as well. So you can put that marker anywhere you want on the map. Again, if you do open up the survey form from the map, it will fill in the location for you. So again, saves you a bit of a job. The last question on this page is, when was your survey? So we're going to choose the date of our survey. By default, it defaults to today, because if you're out in the field, it means you don't have to type in the date. Let's say it was last Wednesday, and it's going to ask us when we started that survey, what time. So again, that defaults to now, because if you're out in the field whilst you're using the form, it means you don't have to type in the time. But let's say the survey started at 8 o'clock in the morning, for an example. You can add some photos of your site if you want. That's not essential. And now we're going to go to the second page. So we're going to go to page 2.
Sorry, Rob, can I just ask a question?
Yes, of course, yeah.
On the location,
Yep.
My sites they have a farm name, but
Yep.
they're actually spread across probably 1.5 miles of countryside.
That's fine.
So putting a precise farm location is all very well, but that's only about 4 sites out of 20.
That's no problem. Yeah, and we do appreciate that. It can be a very rough approximation, to be honest.
Right.
It's just so that when we're very, very quickly looking at where surveys have taken place, we can just see which sites have been done. That's all these points on the map representing the site really do. The real interest of location is obviously actually where your observations are, where you saw a slow worm or a lizard. So we'll come on to that. So don't worry too much about that. And as I say, if you do load the form from the map, it actually puts a location in there by default for you, which is just a rough center of where that site has been set up. So it's not exact science there.
Just to pick up on that point there, Rob. So is it the simplest thing to take away from this point that if you know the code of your farm,
yeah,
then you put the code in, that automatically takes you there. So I guess, Colin, I don't know what your code is for Beach Team, but it will be whatever it is. But if you put that code in, that would automatically take you, and your locations are split, but it would know it's your farm and it will take you to that farm. Is it as simple as that, Rob? Or not quite?
Not quite, but I'll demonstrate when we go through to the map a bit later.
Yep.
So if I put the code in here without having come from the map, I still have to put a location in manually. Whereas if I'd come from the map, it would fill everything in for me straight away. So that's the slight difference. But as I say, it doesn't matter too much as long as the site location is just a rough approximation. It's just part of how the form works, but don't worry too much about that. So page 2 is all about what you saw during your survey. So your records. This is the really important part, obviously. So imagine you're out at your farm and you're walking along, and on your farm, hopefully you've got several mats or tins, whatever you want to call them, to check. In the form, it calls them artificial cover objects. That's just the terminology we use. And you've come across your tin and you're going to check it. And we're going to press this plus button to add a record at that tin or at that mat. So we'll have to wait a second just for it to do some thinking. And now I'm going to add some details about where I saw that, or where I made that observation and when I made that observation. So firstly, the time that I made that observation. Again, it does that by default based on the time of your computer or your phone you're using at the time, because by default it thinks you're in the field, but you can just change that manually. That's not a problem. So we could say that was 8:45 in the morning. Then it asks you, what method were you using when you found that animal? So for the most part, that's probably going to be artificial cover objects. You found that animal, or you were checking a mat or a tin. But the form also allows for, if perhaps you were walking along and you saw a grass snake basking next to a pond, or maybe you were curious and you picked up a log or something that was lying around. So for those options, we also have visual. So that's if you're just walking along and you find something, or existing cover object. That's if you're lifting up something that isn't really part of the survey, but you want to check it. And on farms, we see all sorts of stuff like that. So maybe an old barn door or a tailgate off the back of a truck, we find all, or a tire, You find all sorts of things around farms, don't you? So if that's the case, and it's not something that's actually officially been laid down as part of the survey, you can choose existing cover objects. So we've got these three options. So firstly, let me demonstrate what happens if you choose visual. So you're walking along and you've spotted a grass snake slithering across the path. I've chosen visual, and now I'm going to choose the location for that record. So again, we see the same map options here. I can use my GPS by pressing the crosshairs icon, and it will pop a dot on the map. If you're out in the field on your phone, obviously it'll be much more accurate, normally 3 to 5 meters, which is great. Or if I come back to my computer and I've just written down on my notes where that location was, I can come onto the map. I can sort of manually move around if it's somewhere near where I am, or I can enter a location. So in this case, I'm going to pop in a grid reference. I'm going to grab one that I've got for a site. Well, that's not very good. Let's just use this grid reference here. And hopefully this will be, I think this is for Christmas gorse. It will show me the dot on the map there. And I can say, yeah, I think that's about right. But if you want to, you can obviously just adjust that if it's slightly wrong. And once I'm happy with the location, I press the tick button. So we found the location, we plotted it on the map. And then all we need to do is say how accurate we are, or how happy we are with the accuracy of that location. So for most of the options, hopefully that'll be about 5 meters, but maybe you couldn't remember exactly where you saw something. So it might be within 10 meters or 100 meters. So you can adjust that as need be. One thing I should mention is that there are questions on here that have a little red asterisk next to them. And those are questions you have to answer to submit the form. A lot of the questions don't have that, and they're not essential, but just to make note that anything that does have an asterisk, if you try and submit the form without answering that question, it will shout at you and tell you to go back and answer that question. So now we've added when and where our sighting was and by what method. We can now mark if that was a confidential record or not. For the most part, your records probably won't be confidential, but if for some reason you don't want that record being shared with other people, do mark it as confidential. We're then going to mark what species we saw. So we either have the option of a drop-down menu. So we've got all the most sort of common species we're likely to come across, or you can just start typing the species name and it will fill it in for you. If you did check a tin and you found nothing, we do have a no records option. So you can use that. If you did check a map and you didn't see anything, it's still useful to know that you checked it and there was nothing there. If what you found wasn't on the list, so at the moment we haven't got any mammals on the list, you could say I found a wood mouse under my tin and just enter that as a text option by choosing other in the species list. The next couple of questions after this are quite self-explanatory. So quantity, how many did you see? If you know that, you can put the number in. Do you know the life stage? Yes, they were both adults. Again, you can leave that if you want to. Do you know what the sex was? Yep, they were both males. For reptiles, so I'm just going to change the species I saw here. Oops, sorry, popping in the wrong box here. So let's put grass snake back in the options here. And let me put, I've got an evidence option here. And this evidence option is if you found either a dead animal, because dead isn't really a life stage, so we use the term evidence for that instead, or if you found a skin of an animal. So quite often, maybe you, instead of finding a snake itself, you might find a snake skin. So you can record that under evidence. Or if you found a dead animal, you can mark it as dead in that box as well. Again, it's not essential, but if you did, the option is there. Most of these, again, questions are optional. You can add any photos here. So either if you're out using your phone whilst you're using the form, you can actually use your camera phone to grab some photos there and then. Or if you've already taken some photos and saved them, you can access your folders on your computer or on your phone to add those photos. And obviously that's really helpful for us verifying the records afterwards, especially if you're not sure what species you saw. Photos are always really useful. So you've gone through, you've added your first record. We now have two options. We can either add another record at the same time and location, And that normally happens because you maybe lifted up a mat and there's 3 slow worms and a lizard all huddled up together. So in that case, I'm going to press this plus button here to add another record in the same time and location. So again, I've now just got to add the fact, maybe let's say I saw some slow worms with my grass snake. Or I'm going to want to add a record in a new place or a different time. So I'm going to add that using this second plus button. So I walked along, I'm now checking mat number 2. And just bear with me a minute, it loads. And this time we're going to say that I checked an artificial cover object, one of my mats. Now, one of the useful things, because I put in the correct site code for my site, we get 2 extra features in the form. Firstly, right down the bottom here, I get a list of all of the mats we've got recorded at that site. And once I've said that I've checked them, it will show me that I've checked them in a list here. So that's a nice little reference so you know which mats are currently registered at the site, because it can be easy to forget. The second useful thing is that because I've put in the right site code, all of those tins or mats are listed in this drop down here. So because I've chosen artificial cover object, I get this extra drop down menu and I can just choose which one I check. So let's say I check number 9, and the form knows where that mat is already registered. So I don't have to put a location in. The location of that mat is added for me. So that saves you a bit of time. So that's why knowing the right site code is actually quite useful. And I heard Nick mention ants earlier. We do have an option if you're checking your mats. You can either mark the fact that it wasn't checked, so perhaps you didn't have time. You can mark the fact that it wasn't found, so perhaps it's now overgrown with bracken or other vegetation, you can't find it. Or you can mark the fact you checked it and there was loads of ants. So if you do want to flag there were ants, you can actually mark that on the form as an optional extra, because it is quite regular in these reptile surveys. If for some reason you think the map has moved, again, you can go into the map here and you can just adjust the location slightly if that needs to be done. And you'll get a warning if you do that, just to tell you, oh, you know, you've moved it from where the computer thinks it should be. Again, you'll need to just add the accuracy, and you go through the same process, adding what you saw there. So let's say we were really lucky and we found an adder, which unfortunately aren't that frequent on farm sites. Add any other information we want. And we keep repeating that process until we're happy we've finished the survey. So we've gone through, we've added all of our records, or perhaps no records at some of the tins. If you want, you can add additional comments at those locations. So I can say perhaps a comment about my artificial cover object, damaged by tractor, which does happen from time to time. And we can go all the way through, and actually now down here you can see that I've checked number 9. It's not in this list anymore, it's over here. Once you've gone through and added all your records, you finally scroll through to page 3. And page 3 is basically your final summary page of what's happened. So first thing it asks you is, what was the weather like during your survey? So we're going to add a bit about cloud cover, and these are just on a 3-point scale. So cloud cover, there wasn't much cloud, no rainfall, and maybe there was a bit of light wind. So very quick to add that. There is a temperature option here, but we only encourage this if you actually had a thermometer with you, which we don't expect you to have. So don't worry about that. We can get data from weather stations later on, so don't worry. It's then going to ask you what your recording methods were. So I can say I was looking for animals and also was checking tins. And finally, it asks you when I finished my survey. So we'll go back and say it was 21st of July. And let's say that was at 11:30. And that's all I have to fill in. It does ask you how long you spent surveying. We can adjust that to say, actually, I spent some time having lunch, take 10 minutes off. And once we're finished, we click on the tick button and we get 3 options. We get the option to send that data now, which is great if we've got an internet connection. And I'm happy that all the data is correct. I've got an option to continue my survey if I think I need to add a bit more data, or I can save it to send later. So maybe I haven't got very good signal on my phone, or I don't want to use my data, I want to wait till I've got Wi-Fi back at home. You can save it in your outbox and send it later. So I can save it in my outbox, and that'll add it into my outbox. You can also stop anytime during filling in your survey form. Press this red X at the top here and save it in your drafts if you want to come back to it later. So maybe you started filling it in on your computer, you've now got to run off and do something else, save it in the drafts, you can come back into your drafts and carry on filling it in. Same thing, you can come into your outbox and send your surveys which you haven't yet sent through to the database. Once you've sent your surveys, they're up, clicking that Send Now button, they're uploaded into our database directly. So the data is there straight away. You can go back and look at those forms you've submitted using what's called your inbox. And that will show you a list of all the surveys you've submitted in the past. So that data is there. So that's one way of going back and looking at what you've had submitted in the past. I can see I'm actually running a bit behind time, so I'm going to have to speed ahead. I'm now going to jump into using the maps on your phone. So what I'm going to do now is stop sharing from here and start sharing from my phone. Hopefully this will work. We did test this earlier. Because I do want you to see what this looks like on a phone. So hopefully now you can see my phone. And you can see I've got the Explorer app there and the Survey 123 app. So we're going to open up Explorer. I've already downloaded this. I've already logged in, so it's going to log me in straight away. And it's going to show me a list of all the maps I have access to. The map you will be working with is called the National Reptile Survey Map, Bucks Farmland, standing for obviously Buckinghamshire. So hopefully that's fairly self-explanatory. Chances are you won't see any other maps anyway. You'll probably only see that option. I'm going to click on that map and it's going to jump me straight into the map. By default, it will take you to this overarching map, which shows all of the farms. You can zoom in and out just using your fingers. And as you zoom in, you'll see additional information. So you'll start to see where the cover object, where the refugia are and things like that. Most of you are probably only maybe working on one farm. The quickest way to get there is by clicking on the three dots at the top, going to bookmarks and choosing your farm from the list. So let's go to Christmas Gorse. It takes me straight to Christmas Gorse. I can zoom in a bit and I can see everything I need for that farm. And in fact, I can see I probably need to change the boundary or move on my refugia because it's slightly outside of the boundary we've got there. I can do other things. I can turn layers on and off. So maybe I don't want to see where the cover objects are. So now I've turned them off. Using the layer option, which is these squares at the top. I can search for locations. In this app, you can only use grid references to search. I can change my base map. So maybe I only want to see where the roads are rather than the aerial map. Oh, sorry, I managed to crash it there. It doesn't like doing the apps and being shared over the internet. I've happened every time I do training, I manage to crash this because of that issue. So as I say, I can change the base map to something else, but most of you probably prefer to have an aerial map. It's much more use in the field. You can do other things, which we're not going to worry about today. They're not really essential. The key thing here is being able to see what is on the map, you know, where your cover objects are, your refugia, seeing other things if we've got other things mapped, like parking locations. If you're in the field on your phone, you will see where you are in relation to this. So obviously I'm quite far away from these farms at the moment down in Devon, but if I press the crosshairs icon on the top, it will take me to my location. So here we are at my house. But obviously if I was out in the field, I can then see where I am in relation to those farms or those items on those farms. So let's jump back to one of those farms. And that's really useful in terms of navigation, making sure you're in the right place to try and find your artificial cover object. Now, these layers are actually interactive, so you can click on them and you can do things like see information about them. So for the sites, you'll see some buttons which help you launch the survey forms. You can also get directions, which is to open up things like Google Maps for driving directions. You can use your compass. If you're actually on the site, you might want to use your compass to help you find a missing mat. or you can add a location to your bookmarks if it's not already in there by clicking add to places. What I want to demonstrate now is how you go from being in the map to opening the survey form. So this is going to fill in my site name, my site code, and my site location for me. So I'm going to press Start Reptile Survey, and it's going to open up the Survey 123 app, which I've got installed and downloaded on my phone. It's going to open up the National Reptile Survey form for me. So I haven't even got to click through the first couple of screens, and it'll just take a minute, especially because we're sharing over the internet. Bit of a time lag here because of the screen sharing. And it's opened up the form for me. It's opened up the right form, the National Reptile Survey form. It's filled in the site code, which is BDF in this case, the site name, and the site location. So it saved me doing all of that, and it makes sure that you're putting the right site name into the form. So page 1 of the form is basically filled in for me. So that's really, really handy. Right, I'm just going to stop sharing from this screen. So ignore all my other notifications. And we're going to go to stop sharing, hopefully. If I can find out how to do that. Where are we? Meeting in progress. Stop sharing. There we go. We got there in the end. Right, I'm going to go back to sharing my computer screen. Back to my presentation. And I want to just show you the exact same thing, but from my web browser. And we can do this really, really quickly because of time. Basically, you can access exactly the same map we just looked at on my phone through the internet, either through a direct link or through our Arc Survey Hub resources website. So actually, I've got that embedded on this page here. So same thing, I can zoom into a farm. I've actually got my bookmarks up in the top here. So let's go to Christmas Gorse Farm again. I can see all the same things, all the same layers, my cover objects. Again, they're all interactive with the same pop-up. So I can start my survey by clicking on the button. I didn't show you the pop-up for the cover objects, the refugia. So actually you can click on them as well and see a bit of information about those. If we have species records, which actually in this case, I know that Claudia added a record here of a grass snake. So I can actually click on here and see the grass snake record and even see the photo that was added for that, which is really nice. Now I just have to work out how to get rid of this photo, which I don't know how to do. Let me, bear with me 1 second. I need to go out of full screen. There we go. And let's go back into full screen on this. Go back to the right section. So we're in our map on the internet. You have all the same functionality. You can turn your layers on and off. You can change your base maps. You can go to your bookmarks. Nick asked about being able to print your maps. So the way to do that is firstly, go to the area you want to print. So you go to your bookmarks. We click on Christmas Gorse, for example. We zoom into the area we want to print. And we have a print button at the top here. And we click on the print icon and we print it. It's very similar to taking a screenshot of your screen. It just does some of those steps for you. So that's basically the same experience that we had there. So that's really how to use the map. It's fairly intuitive if you've used any sort of, web map, anything like that in the past. Let's get out of that and let's go on to the next section, which is how can you see the data you've submitted? Because after you've submitted your results, chances are you want to go back and actually look at those data. So option 1, as we discussed, you go into Survey 123, you go into the National Reptile Survey form, you click on your inbox, and there you'll be able to see a list of all of the survey forms you've submitted. Option 2, you go into your map, either on your phone in Explorer or using the web link. You have to go into the layer list and turn on species records. By default, we have it turned off just because we don't want it to crowd the map, especially when you start getting lots of records, it will start to take over the map a little bit. So it's turned off by default. You just go into the layer list in your map and you click on species records and you turn it on. Option 3 is you will get a link to be able to download your records as a spreadsheet, which I won't show you right now, but when you've got your account set up, we'll give you that link and you'll basically be able to click a button click on download, and you'll be able to save a spreadsheet of your records to your computer. So finally, I appreciate we are running a bit behind time. All of these resources are available through what we're calling the Arc Survey Hub, which is a website. We'll give you that link. You'll be able to log in to this website. So this is the website live as it looks. You'll have access to all sorts of resources. So if you want to be able to download maybe like a paper version of the survey form, you want to see further guidance on how to use the 2 apps we've talked about today, that's all accessible on there. So I've got presentations already stored online for you to go back and access, to go through all the things about how to download the apps, how to use them, what the different questions are like, all that sort of stuff is already online for you to go back and look at, as well as obviously today's presentation. You have a link to your map there, so I can click on that and that will open up the map we just looked at. And another resource I'm working on is also a dashboard. So later down the line, when you've got lots of records in there, you'll have basically a little application you can go to, and you can see a summary of all the records that are coming in. So you'll be able to see how many grass snakes have been seen across the whole of your project, and all that sort of thing in a really nice, quick and easy way to do it. So that is the end of my presentation. Again, I'm sorry for running slightly over time. Time for any questions, really. And anything we don't get time for, please do email me. There's my email address. And again, further down the line, when we've got you set up with your accounts, any technical issues, any problems, feel free to give me an email and we can help resolve that, hopefully.